But I had the opportunity to meet with all the commanders out here and have a really candid discussion when it comes to the issue of sexual assault in our military. What needs to be done in order to better address this issue? There are issues related to prevention and education and other elements of making sure that all airmen are respected and cared for and that these assaults don't happen. We're very much also focusing on, after an assault is reported, what can we do to improve the process of the investigations and the judicial process? What other resources do they need? What's working, what's not working? Support to the alleged victims, making sure that there is due process. It's done in a timely manner. So we had a really good discussion. I don't want to obviously get into specifics on it, but this is a follow-on to, I haven't talked to you guys in a couple weeks now, so let me just kind of share this journey that we've been on. I decided a few weeks ago, actually on a Monday night when I got to D.C., after I looked at the hearings that we had for that week, and we had a hearing on sexual assault in the military and what the panels were going to be, I decided actually that night that I was going to share my perspectives, not just as someone who served and not just as a commander, but also as a survivor of military sexual assault myself. That was not an easy decision, but I believe it was the right thing to do at the right time, so that I could help lead on this issue, and people could better maybe understand of where I'm coming from and my perspectives, based on my all of my experiences. Since then, we have sprung into action to do whatever needs to be done and lead on this issue, partnering and working with the Pentagon related to sexual assault. So I don't have the timelines right in front of me, but I'll just kind of give you a quick rundown. I pretty quickly talked to the Secretary of the Air Force and the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, met with the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, spoke to the Secretary of the Air Force on the phone extensively. We followed on with meetings with the Air Force JAG and the Air Force IG. I came from the Air Force, my experiences in the Air Force. I love our Air Force. I love our airmen. I love the men and women that are serving out here. They're doing amazing things, for our country. And so I kind of wanted to start with the Air Force about what else can we do, because that's my unique experience. But obviously we need to address this DoD-wide. And so I also had a conversation with the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dunford, and then Acting Secretary of Defense Shanahan. At the hearing we had last week, we followed up with the letter that I sent him. Really felt the best way to do this, instead of service by service, these separate meetings, that we needed to kind of do this all together. So I asked him to create this task force that I could also participate in. It's a little non-traditional. These different branches of the government would be at the table together, but we need to solve this together. And so I want to participate in that task force to bring the thought leaders and the experts together to swiftly see what other initiatives that we can come up with before we mark up the defense bill in about 60 days that we could bring to the table to address this issue. Pretty quickly, the acting secretary called me the next day. We had a good conversation about the way forward. He agreed to establish this task force, and so they're already getting to work. They're not waiting for me to get back to D.C. next week. The Air Force is already leading the charge, as I'm proud that they're doing, as I expected them to do. The other services are coming on board, and so we'll be continuing that effort, and I'll be getting together probably with the task force leaders next week. That's what I asked for, as we look at what initiatives and what other things need to change related to stopping sexual assault in our military. So this has been a journey that I didn't expect to be on, just to be candid with you all. Not one that I would have chosen, not one that I had even planned for if we had talked a month ago as to what we're focusing on in my office. But sometimes, you're asked to step up and lead on issues that are maybe personally painful for you, but you have a unique perspective to lead on, and that's the mantle that is now upon me, and I take it very seriously, and it's not been an easy journey in the last few weeks, to be candid. as healed as I believed I am from my own experiences, when you start sort of talking continuously and interacting with people, and people are coming to talk to me about their own experiences, both in the military and in civil society. This is not an easy path. So many women and men have been through this, both in our civilian society and in the military. It touches nearly every family, every community, and so I'm really honored to be able to be a leading voice on this issue, so we can find healing and find justice, for those who have been through it. So, what kind of questions do you have?
Yeah, Senator, on that task force, sometimes that leads to just talk but not action. How are you trying to make sure that we actually see some changes, and what changes do we want to see?
Absolutely. No, I agree. We don't need to be sitting around talking. We need to come up with very specific solutions of what's not working and what we can improve related to the system. I'm very much focused right now on post-assault report and the investigation process and the judicial process. We've got to address these other issues as well, as far as prevention and culture and training and education, everything that goes with that, and we're going to move on and we're going to be dealing with those as well. But right now, in the next 60 days, I've asked very specific problems and deliverables on what needs to change in order to improve the process from the reporting forward. So I don't want to predetermine what results or what initiatives we're going to come up with, and I'm pressing them very hard to come up with specific deliverables on what we can change in order to address this issue.
I believe in the past you mentioned that you care about the order of command and you kind of want to keep this in
Yes.
the command structure, while others say that they want to keep it out of the commanders because of the fear of almost reparations or whatever it may be. Are you afraid, if you keep in that command structure, of having people be afraid to report?
So I don't agree with the premise of the question, and I don't take my position lightly here, again, as a survivor and as a former commander. And command and the military is like nothing else in society. It's very difficult for maybe a lot of people to understand. But, America's mothers and fathers send their sons and daughters to put on the uniform. And it is like nothing else in civilian society. It's not like any supervisor or any CEO, because we are asking people to give their lives if needed, in defense of our country. We're asking them to go take lives. And so in that regard, there is a covenant, the way I describe it, of the military unit that the commander is ultimately responsible for the mission, responsible for the people, responsible for the climate, responsible for the good order and discipline, and to make sure that everybody is treated with dignity and respect. And that's what command is all about. When I took the guide on and took command myself, I didn't quite even understand this fully until that responsibility was on my shoulders. And so if we want this to be solved in our military, we need commanders to be more involved, more prepared, more accountable, because if you want anything fixed in the military, the commander's got to own it. So if the commander is the problem, we need to make sure that there are opportunities for people to go around the commander, to go to the command level above them, to go to outside organizations in that process. And those relief valves are there, but we need to make sure that that trust is there, so that if somebody is a victim, that they understand who they can go to, they understand what the process is going to be, that the investigation is done swiftly and thoroughly, because it's so important that when it comes to any of the evidence and the interviewing and all that it is done by highly trained professionals that are specializing in this, from my view. And then all that evidence is provided in cooperation with the judge advocate, the lawyers that are involved. And that's then in close cooperation, the lawyers advise, and then the commanders decide whether they're going to move forward to a court-martial or whether there are other things that they can do in what we call non-judicial punishment. And so I truly believe that the commander has to be fully involved. Oftentimes, I think this is misrepresented, that if you are for the victim, you want to take it away from commanders. And if you're for kind of the establishment, then you want it to be with commanders. I disagree with all that, and I don't take that position lightly, having been through what I've survived. But with a lot of thought and a lot of experience on this, I truly believe, commanders have to stay involved, but the status quo is not an option. So something's got to change. So what are we going to do to set commanders up for success and to provide the trust that the victims know that their case is being taken seriously, that they're not being retaliated against because they reported, that we've got professionals that are highly experienced and highly trained that are dealing with the case all the way through, and it's done in a timely manner. And so these are all the things that I think are really important that we also take a fresh look at. There's been a lot of legislative initiatives over the last decade, about 115 total. Some of them are actually just going into force just this January. Some major changes that I think are really important, but we gotta freshly look at it and see what else is required.
Senator,
Let's go right.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Sorry, I'm.
He's raising his hand.
you laid out a pretty aggressive timeline. Do you
I
anticipate
did.
a legislative reaction in the NDAA?
Well, what I'm looking backwards from the NDAA markup, right? Because when we do the individual every year, the defense bill, that's where if it's going to take an act of Congress or it's going to be legislative initiatives, we got to get it included in the NDAA. So I'm looking back from that on the Senate side to see how we can identify initiatives and solutions that we can include in the NDAA. So that's why I've set this aggressive timeline.
Senator,
Yvonne.
when
Yeah.
you had to handle or deal with reports of sexual assault as a member of leadership, how did you approach those, and what did you learn from having to handle them?
So a lot of things have changed over the years, and so in my case, when I was the squadron commander of the 354th Fighter Squadron, I had no cases reported to me. Previous to that, I was an acting commander when I was an operations officer, and there was an incident that happened. We immediately went to the investigators, immediately started the criminal investigation, and then we went through that process. I don't want to get into the details of that. Went through the process of the investigation and the decisions to prosecute and justice related to that. I had both the alleged victim and alleged perpetrator in the unit, and so I saw some of the real challenges that you face in circumstances like this, and some of my things were not the same now as they were then as far as the types of initiatives that have happened. So in my conversation with commanders today, I was asking them very specifically, hey, did this improve? Did this improve? These are based on some of the things that I saw was going on at that time. We've done some really important initiatives in the military that don't exist in civil society. For example, the Special Victims Council. This is a new initiative, again, directed by Congress. So in all of these cases now, the victim actually has their own lawyer who represents them, not just the JAG who represents the prosecutor. Because oftentimes, we heard this in the hearing 2 weeks ago, the victim said, I'm like a witness in my own, I'm only a witness in this case of which I'm the victim. And so we now have a lawyer in the room who's actually representing the best interests of the victim, which is something that doesn't even exist in civil society. This is a pretty major, the Special Victim Council for this region was actually in the meeting with us. This is a pretty important, and we've heard from a lot of victims how this has really been crucial for them. That we didn't have those types of things back then. The special victims advocates at every base, we didn't have those back then. And so ensuring that those programs where you have specialized people who are there to support the victim so they get the care they need, they get the support they need, they feel like their voice is heard in the justice process, all of this stuff needs to be continued to be strengthened. It didn't exist then. Yeah.
And then we'll go to Telemundo, guys.
Yeah, I have a
Colin.
Yes, Trump administration are trying to cut the budget for the military bases in Arizona to build the wall. Do you think this is going to affect the military bases in Arizona and
Yeah.
effort?
So again, I don't agree with the premise of your question. We do need to secure our border, and we need to fund our military. I think it's our responsibility to do both. In this case, the National Emergencies Act allows the president to declare an emergency and to use over 100 different authorities that Congress has given presidents, to then tap into for any emergency that they declare. There's about 30 emergencies, by the way, that are still ongoing on a variety of different issues. In this case, I very much have been focused in on the 10 USC 2808 authorities, which is related to military construction funding and military construction projects. I've had several conversations with Pentagon leadership and with White House leadership related to this. The misinformation that's been put out recently is actually just that, misinformation. They were asked to give a list of all unobligated military projects, okay, no matter what their status was. And in that case, there were 6 items on the list in Arizona. 4 of them were fiscal year 19 projects that were authorized and appropriated. 2 here at Luke, 1 at Davis Monthan, 1 at Camp Navajo. And the FY19 authorized projects and appropriated projects that are awarded before the 30th of September are never going to be impacted. Any of those other projects, of which there's one other that is going to be awarded before the 30th of September, is not going to be impacted. So there is one potential that was recently brought to our attention at Fort Huachuca that it has the potential, should they get to that stage of their sequential funding, has the potential to be impacted. I've made my position very clear on this, that cannot happen. I had that conversation at very high levels, and we're going to make sure that we backfill any projects, but it doesn't mean that project's going to be impacted because it's in a large pool of potential projects of which a subset could potentially be impacted, if not backfilled.
Just to build a wall that could affect people who are trying to, apply for citizenship. What do you think?
So I didn't hear the first part of the question.
Yes, that also the Trump administration are trying to increase 10% of the immigration services.
Yeah, so I would just tell you what I'm trying to do. We need to secure the border. We need to modernize the legal immigration system. That includes cross-border commerce that is so critical for our economy every single day here in Arizona, the legitimate trade and travel. We've got to make the legal immigration system less cumbersome. Right now it's very archaic and it's too cumbersome. So I'm, for modernizing that and keeping it robust while we also, secure the border and keep the bad stuff out. So that's my approach.
And guys, we're going to do one question a person and we're going to keep this moving. So we'll go straight to
Okay.
Nancy.
Senator, I mean, this is all that is something that has been going on for, decades in the military. Is it safe to say that you're getting these plans in motion that even though they're not set in stone yet, is it safe to say that it changes today from now on, no more like it used to be? If you have been a victim, you're going to be heard. Believe me, we're going to do everything we can to help you out.
Absolutely. Look, we have zero tolerance of sexual assault in our military. Zero tolerance. Every commander says that, okay? This is a very prevalent crime in civil society. We are a subset of civil society. We bring people in every single year, but you know what? The military needs to be better, right? We expect our military to have the best and brightest. We expect our military to have the people of the highest moral caliber and character. We expect more out of our military. And so when something like this happens, it needs to be taken seriously. It needs to be investigated immediately. There needs to be justice that is served. We got to make sure we prevent it from happening. We got to make sure that people understand it's not tolerated here. Again, a lot has been done. And there are so many amazing men and women on that base every single day that are not perpetrators. Every single day, they are out there doing their job. They're doing amazing things for America. And we want to make sure that their story is told as well. But for those who have suffered as a victim of assault, they need to make sure that they are treated with respect and that they're given all the tools that they need for their own healing, and that the judicial process is one that is fair and that swiftly does a thorough investigation and has the best chance of having justice.
All right, we'll go right there, guys. Guys, we're going to go right there. No, please respect this, guys.
Senator,
Yeah.
I want to talk about, you said briefly about that you believe that you're healed from this. Did
Yeah.
the military provide you any kind of assistance at all?
I didn't ask the military for assistance, so it's not fair to judge them on that. I went through my own journey, and by the grace of God and people around me and just the path that I took, I really feel like I'm in a very strong and whole place. But I didn't ask them for any assistance. So.
What assistance is that for?
We're going to come right
Yeah,
here.
there's plenty of assistance that they do have, whether it's through the support related to counseling and mental health support, or even working with organizations off base that specialize in these issues, through the chaplaincy and others. There is a whole lot of support available for anybody who's been through this.
All right, right here.
So what was the most promising thing from your conversations today? Is there anything in particular you came away happiest with?
This is not a happy topic, so I don't know if I would
but
use
I
that
mean,
word, but
encouraged by-
yeah. So look, I every time I visit our military bases, and every time I have the opportunity to visit with our men and women in uniform, I'm encouraged. These people are amazing. I mean, they are serving and sacrificing. Their caliber is extraordinary. The sacrifice that them and their families make both in our commander meeting and when I just had a meet and greet and we're talking to all sorts of airmen from across the base, I'm always encouraged when I leave the base. On this particular topic, it was really important for me to hear from current commanders as to what their current challenges are, so that I wasn't forming my opinions based on my own experiences and based on my own sort of the anecdotes of others when I was around the time I was a commander. So I'm encouraged by the caliber of commanders. I'm encouraged by their commitment, their very strong commitment to make sure that sexual assault doesn't happen in their unit on their watch.
All right, we're going to go right there.
In 2017, the DoD report 1 in 3 assaults are reported.
Yeah.
What can you do to change, or what are you going to do to change that culture so reporting?
So, as I said, this is something that's similar in civil society, right? Many times sexual assault does not go reported. Victims make that choice for a variety of different reasons. In the military, we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to immediately go get assistance for themselves, and if they want an investigation to happen, that swiftly happens. That process, by the way, didn't exist years ago, where they can give what's called a restricted report, where they can just get help, get medical attention, get support, get counseling, get whatever they need, or an unrestricted report, where it actually goes into the investigative process. And so all of that is now, available for individuals for us to be able to move that process forward. Right. Look, there's more that needs to be done, for sure. But when this crime in civil society, many victims choose not to tell anyone, never mind report it to an official. I mean, this is the reality of the complexity of sexual assault crimes. What we're seeing in the military is the rate of reporting is going up, but we don't know what the denominator is. So we don't know whether that means the rate of assaults are going up or that people are trusting the system more. So that they feel confident that they can report and that it's going to be dealt with correctly. So, bottom line is, we got to tolerate none of this. We got to prevent it. But when a report comes in, it's got to be swiftly dealt with in a timely manner so healing can happen and justice can be served.
All right, we're going to do 2 more, guys. We'll go right here.
Senator, can you address your tweet on John McCain? You spoke about the peace and respect his family deserves, but is there a reason you felt you didn't need to bring up President Trump in this? Do you feel like that wasn't needed in denouncing him, especially with his latest remarks? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I made it clear. I love John McCain. John McCain is an American hero. This state reveres John McCain, and his family deserves respect by everybody. And so that's my message.
Does the president respect? Is he showing respect to the McCain family?
Again, there's a lot of disrespect going on out there all the way around. I did talk to the president yesterday. I wanted to make sure he understood how I felt about Senator McCain and how Arizona felt about Senator John McCain, and he heard me.
Does it hurt
All right,
more
we're going
than
to keep
anyone
going
else?
on it, guys.
What
Guys,
was
we're
his
going to keep...
response to you?
Hey, guys, one more time.
He heard me.
We're talking about the issue of the day. Asked and answered. We're going to keep going.
He heard me. Yeah. Sorry,
And
is
we're
there
going to keep going off. Come on, guys. Back to the topic.
anything else? So you already asked a question. Is there anybody else who hasn't asked one? Sorry, I know you're managing
Yeah.
it.
One more.
You've already asked a question too. Is there anybody else?
All right, well, last question.
Okay.
2 more.
Romeo has proposed constitution to keep the Supreme Court at 9 justices. You support that idea? You want to
I've not seen that. Is that a recent thing based on some Democrat presidential candidates talking about expanding the Supreme Court? I think it should stay at 9. I think it should stay at 9. All right, we got to head out.
All right, thank you, guys.
Who are coming here every day doing their job, doing what they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Like, anything can be overshadowed by.
Yes, I agree.
What do you want to tell those men and women
Yes,
who are here?
thank you for that question. And I think in my answers I shared that as well, but thank you for that question. I am so proud of the men and women who work here at Luke Air Force Base that come here every single day, put on the uniform and the civilians, and are willing to serve and sacrifice for our country. And they are doing an amazing job, and I want to make sure that our community knows that, and I am so deeply proud of them. There are a small number of people here that are violating the trust that they've been given, but that doesn't represent the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of the men and women who put on the uniform and serve every single day.
All right,
All right,
guys.
thanks,
Gotta
guys.
run.
Appreciate it.
Sorry, I thought you were on. I'm sorry.
Yes, you did. Sounds clear. Team with the wind and the raging jets.
Thanks again for your help.
Yeah, no
Really
worries.
appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for taking my microphone up.
Yeah, no worries. I'm good that way.